Hello and welcome to The Side Woo. This is your host, Thibault, helping you navigate the wild and mysterious path that is the creative life. Join me as I ask our guests about the tools they use to help them survive in the creative wilderness. All right, well, just to kick things off, I am really excited to have today's guests. For those listening, you can go and watch on our YouTube channel. We'll have the glory of our guest in video form. But Renate Hume, is that how you pronounce your last name?
Correct.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me. This is lovely.
For the listeners, I met Renate indirectly. I'm now living in New Mexico, as people may know, and I was doing a little day trip to Taos, and I stopped at a cafe called Mountain Monk, and you had like a flyer up on the wall, and it immediately caught my eye, and I was like, oh, interesting, mandala readings. And then I started talking to a couple in the cafe, and just for the record, I walked in and literally everyone in the cafe turned around and said hello to me. So it was quite the warm welcome. And so I started talking to this couple, and the wife and the couple, Sarah, recommended meeting with you. She's like, I did this mandala reading and it changed my life. And so I thought, well, that's a ringing endorsement. I would love to talk to Renate. So then we ended up doing a mandala reading, and you so kindly agreed to come on the podcast. So we always start with like what astrology sign, so maybe that could kick things off.
I'm a Cancer. And if I tell you what the rising is, I'm not even certain, because I got my information about my birth time through a deep trance medium. And when I went back to check it, there were 6 hours difference. And I don't know if that makes a big difference or not, but she had told me my rising sign would be Virgo. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Wow, there's a lot of questions I have. So she was a medium that you went to for a reading?
Yes, I wanted to know what was my birth time. I don't know the date, of course. And she said it's 10:40 in the morning. When I checked in my hometown, it was 4:40 in the morning.
And is that because she was in a different time zone or something?
In Europe, yes.
Okay. And how did you end up finding the time? Did you
I asked my sister to go to the town hall, and they were nice enough to check, because I wasn't even sure there were good records. It was during the war. And lots of things fell by the wayside. But yes, there was actually a 4:40 birth time.
But that's kind of wild that the medium was able to do the time zone translation as part of her reading.
10:40.
That's bizarre.
It should have been the other way around, though.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I wouldn't even begin to know how that works, that she would be
Neither
able
do I.
do the calculations and be off like by exactly 4 hours or 6 hours.
It should, well, unless I don't know. It was not 10 p.m. She said a.m. And that's how I had my chart done. And for the longest time, until a couple of years ago, when I found out it was 4 in the morning and not 10 a.m., I believe, well, I'm looking at how I behave and what I do. And thought, well, it seems to fit.
It does, and it kind of aligns with like your witchy like profession.
But I've done other things before. I started out as a violinist, and it was a car accident that stopped my career. I had a very zigzaggy kind of a life in terms of what I did. Went from there to pharmaceutical studies. And when I came to this country, I didn't have a license and didn't want one, because pharmaceutical endeavors here are very different from Europe. we still made things. Yeah.
Mm.
So
I just want to back up. So, what is your rising sign now that?
I don't really know. I still go with the same Virgo because it seems to fit.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for people listening who don't know astrology, the time that you're born affects like your personal planets, as they're
Hmm.
called. So, like your sun, your rising, and does it affect like Venus or anything?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
anything close to the sun up until maybe
Yeah.
like
And
Saturn.
I have to tell you, Venus is definitely my planet.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go to, yeah, her website, everyone, and you'll see there's a lot of like divine feminine energy coming from it. Okay, well, that's super fascinating. I do kind of want to cyber stalk you later and like look up your chart for you. But
That would be great. Yeah.
maybe you don't want to know.
I'm so comfortable with what is. Do I need to change it?
Right, exactly. That might kind of throw you for a loop. That's
Then I
really
have to
funny.
readjust.
Well, I had something similar happen, but it was just my own brain error. I have Capricorn moon at 0 degrees Capricorn. And so I always read it as like a different house than like I have a Mars Neptune conjunction in the second in Sagittarius. And I always read the Capricorn moon as in a different house. So I always thought it was in the third house, which your moon is kind of an important planet, which would
Hmm.
change for you too, probably. But then I realized like earlier, maybe even like a month ago, that oh my God, the Cap moon is in the second house. Like, and it's like I couldn't see it before, but at the time, the third house really made sense because like just because of how I was engaging with the world. But then when I re-looked at moon in the second house, it kind of blew my mind because it explained some things about like my finances and my job life and everything. So
That's amazing.
it's kind of wild. Like it's like my brain like wouldn't let me see it, kind of like with
Mhm.
you. Maybe there was a some reason why
Maybe I have
you,
to rethink this.
yeah, like you needed
Yeah.
to see yourself as a Virgo rising for a while to get whatever, I don't know.
Hmm.
But astrology aside, I'd love to hear more about your zigzaggy life. I feel like
The
people
zigzaggy life.
I feel like we're kindred spirits in that way because
Yeah.
my
I've
life has,
often reinvented myself, had to
okay.
at times.
Well,
Um,
yeah, if you grew up in the war, were
yeah,
you in Germany the whole time?
yes, I was.
Wow.
I left Germany for Sweden when I was 27,
Okay.
because my first husband was a research scientist. He worked at the Karolinska Institute. And then from there, we came to New York. We immigrated. And I raised three children. And, they were all born in Germany.
Yeah.
And then 2 years into our stay here, he committed suicide. And that threw me for a loop in many
Wow.
ways, not
I'm so
just the
sorry.
loss, but suddenly being responsible alone for three children in a country that I barely knew.
Was that connected to the war at all or
No, I think he was bipolar, and um, he was an artist at heart. He should have never been a scientist.
I
He
see.
was a wonderful painter, a very sensitive person. And I think this career of his sort
Mm.
of damaged the soul or took away what could have been.
Mm. So how did you rebound from that?
Well, initially, I tried everything just to survive. I modeled in New York City, and then I learned how to do European facials. I did that for a while. But I realized also the schools my children were in were not the best. And I had
Where in
friends
New York did you guys live?
in Rockland County
So
in
is
New
that
York.
upstate or
It's not far up. It's on, you go across the George Washington Bridge and you drive north for half an hour and you're there.
okay,
So it was nice, close to the city,
that's nice.
and then I moved to Minneapolis. I had friends there and they thought the schools were much better.
They were. I went to
Yes,
school in Minneapolis,
you
so
were.
I
Oh,
can
great.
confirm that they are really good.
Yeah. And so initially I came there really not having a job, no security yet, but I trusted. And on a Saturday night, I bought the Sunday paper at Vaughn's Superette, I remember. And I put it in front of me and I took a pencil and I closed my eyes. I said, Dear God, I need help here. I need a job. I circled with closed eyes. I stuck my pencil down on the paper and it said, Alpha Horst and Friends looking for receptionist in Edina. I didn't know where Edina was. I didn't know
Fancy.
Alpha Horst and Friend. Anyway, I interviewed and they said, no, you are overqualified. We need just a receptionist. I said,
Mm,
but I need work. I need to survive.
yeah.
So I got the job, and Edina was a lovely salon,
Yeah.
except it was very boring. Everybody was upstairs. I was downstairs taking people's credit cards and money and selling products, but I had no interaction with anybody upstairs. So after some time, boss came by and said, so how do you like your job?
Right.
And I said, honestly, I'm bored out of my mind. Do you have
Yeah.
something more challenging? And he said, well, do you want to work at our cosmetology school? I said, what do I need to know? So I transitioned to there, and that was at a time when Dr. Shivnath Tandon, an Ayurvedic chemist, and Horst were developing the Aveda line. And so I lucked out to be there at that time. It was great.
Yeah, my mom used a lot of Aveda products growing up, so that smell is so like that's so much a part of my childhood, like
I
is
can
all
imagine.
the
Yeah.
products. Like they are
Hmm.
literally, for those who have not ever smelled an Aveda product,
Yeah.
it's like earthy and like kind of this like spicy warm scent with a
Mhm.
lot of the
Yeah.
products that is just so delicious. That's like my favorite scent palette.
Yes.
And so
And
were you involved with developing that
I
smell?
was, but mostly what I was doing in the office was because I had worked with a deep trance medium before and taken natural healing classes from this energy that came through. I was teaching pressure points,
Mm,
head
interesting.
pressure points that then were included in the massage that Aveda practitioners use when they do a shampoo.
So you developed that?
I passed it on. I learned it from the deep trance medium and I passed that on. And that became part of what Aveda does.
And who is this medium? Is this the same person?
The same person, yes. I
And
studied with this medium for almost 30 years. And she no longer is alive, but it was such a high energy, teaching all over the place, even presenting at the UN about earth changes coming. This was in the 70s. Can you imagine? Um, and now I'm looking back and thinking, wow, we knew all of this. You know,
so can you tell me a little bit about how she worked and like what would
she
come
would go
through?
into, first, she would meditate. She would use an affirmation that cleared the energy around. And then she would go into her own meditation and then leave the body and let it be taken over by this energy. The
Oh,
energy was of Deborah, if you think of the tree of life. In more Christian terms, it would be an archangel. It was angelic force coming through. And I
wow.
remember at one point we were asking, what is your mission? Or, why do we call you? Blah, blah. They said, no, we work in teams. We're just energy. Yes, we are given a mission. And sometimes we are assigned to one person for a lifetime. And so we wanted to know what is the mission. And this energy informed us that the mission was to help us evolve and see the new world, to bridge from one to the next.
And so how did this land with you? Because probably like when you first started, were you already kind of accustomed to this way of thinking, or was it like, how did you
No,
get connected with it?
actually, how I started was really quite depressing. When we lived in Sweden, you know, both of us were now in this scientific mode, and we came to believe that if you can't prove it scientifically, it's not acceptable.
Yeah.
I was so depressed. Life didn't seem to make any sense to me from that point of view.
Yeah.
And I was sitting downstairs one night. You know, Sweden is so beautiful in the summer. The full moon was rising behind some rocks in our garden and illuminating from the back some birch trees. And depressed as I was and crying, it was really an awful night.
Yeah.
I looked at that, and suddenly the thought came from nowhere. I certainly didn't originate it, but the thought was, each of these little catkins in these birch trees has the potential for an entire forest. What is the power behind that? And it was like it shocked me out of my state. And I began to search. And so friends would bring me books, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita. And then I would read Three Pillars of Zen, and I started to do Zen meditation. And I didn't have a teacher, but it opened psychically so many things. It was just amazing, shocking in a way. And that was the beginning. But after my husband died, and I was doing fashion shows and so on, I met a woman who had commented on, and I was doing leather work and leather crafts and teaching arts and crafts. I mean, anything I could get my hands on.
Right.
And she commented on the bag I had. And she said, could you tool one of mine? I said, of course. We exchanged numbers. No, we didn't exchange. I gave her my number, but I never heard from her. And then one day I got a phone call from a friend who had a shop, a Mercedes shop. And he said, the weirdest thing just happened. This woman drove past my shop, and, you know, the car came to a stop because the fan belt looked like it was cut by a knife.
Whoa.
And I have a bad memory for names, really awful. And out of my mouth came was, is she black? Is her name blah, blah? And he said, I don't know her name, but yes, she's black. I said, please ask her if she has a bag she wanted to have tooled. And he said, I can't do that. You know, I don't ask my customers anything. I said, please. What he did, and it turned out it was the same lady. I said, please ask her to come for a cup of coffee. When she arrived, I had Edgar Cayce's Many Mansions on my desk. And she said, do you believe in reincarnation? I said, yes. She said, well, my son does too, but I'm not so sure. I said, I find it fascinating. It totally makes sense. Well, she said, my son gave me a reading for my birthday. I said, what's a reading? She explained, and she said she wouldn't go because she's afraid of it. She said, do you want to go? I said, yes. So I wrote down 10 questions, very tricky questions, you know, not giving anything away. And I'm driving to the city, New York City, to 2211 Broadway. And I get up there, and somebody is in the room. It's a very elegant apartment. And through the beveled glass doors, I can see her back, the medium's back, and I can hear the question, can you tell me if my thesis has been plagiarized? And the answer was instantly yes. It was used in Atlanta under the title of, I thought, oh my God, is that possible? So he left. The medium comes out to greet me. And it was like I've always known her. We hugged, and it was like coming home. She said, have you ever had a reading? I said, no. She said, let me explain. So we go in, she goes into her meditation. When the energy came through, it was like the whole place became brighter, and I could not ask my questions the tricky way I had written them down. They came out just plain honest.
I see.
The only question I did not change was, can you tell me more about my husband? And the medium said, I will locate him for you. Keep going with your questions. And I thought, I don't want to talk to him. I'm so upset. He killed himself. He left me and the kids. There was a moment when the medium made a hand gesture that was typical of him. And then the medium said, he is here now and is asking your forgiveness. I mean, that was the beginning. And then when that session was over, I said, what else does this spook do?
Right.
And
And did you feel at peace after talking to your husband,
oh,
or like,
very much. Needless to say, you could not but forgive.
right?
Yes,
And
it made peace for me.
do you feel like having someone who was so energetically light there with you made a difference? Like if someone else had been the vehicle for your husband to come through who didn't maybe have that same presence, like, you know what I mean? I feel like maybe
Yeah,
they facilitated in some way
it's
this.
very possible. I felt
Mm.
very much loved and held and protected. Definitely. But out of that result, from that one session, I asked, what else can I do? What else does this book do? And the medium told me that the medium told me that there will be a healing class, a natural healing class, and I signed up immediately. And so I took, I don't know, maybe 200 different classes, and eventually I came back from Minnesota because I wanted to be closer. And there were so many private sessions, small group sessions for the sake of developing. We called it the development class for mediumship and for helping others.
To kind of move into talking about your mandala practice, is that kind of how you learned to read the mandalas, or like,
No, the,
okay,
the strange part is that, you know, I was training for mediumship, but I think I am too much of a control person. I won't let go of my body or my presence, my awareness. So when I was at Horst in Minneapolis, a lot of times the students would come into my office with problems. I could listen, but I felt I didn't have the tools to help them. So I went back to New York. I did my master in Neurolinguistic Programming, and I studied at the Jung Institute in Zurich. And my focus was on symbology for dreams and in general, but also in archetype and fairy tales because they give us clues. Um, and that was my basis. And then I started a holistic center in Millbrook, New York, where we did meditation groups, dream sessions, natural healing, fire walking, pipe ceremonies. I mean, just about everything.
so what's firewalking? Is that
Fire
where you're
walking
walking
is
poles?
you make a huge fire and then you rake out the coals in a long field and you barefoot walk over the coals, trusting that you will be fine.
Okay. And did that work for you, or
Yes, absolutely. So,
what?
and
So,
it did so also for the people who were signed up for the class.
and is there, because I can't imagine that there's like an in between. Either you do it or you don't.
Either you trust yourself
Yeah.
and higher powers in you, or you don't, in which case you shouldn't go.
And did anyone like start and then it was like too much?
No, no.
What?
You make up your mind. You either do it or you don't. If you don't feel comfortable, don't start.
Don't do it.
Absolutely.
And so when you were walking across the coals yourself, like what was your mindset?
I was just completely focused within my own center, trusting that divinity is within us and trusting that energy and just walking. Yeah.
And did you look at the coals or were you just kind of looking ahead? I'm just curious,
I
like,
was so internal. I just walked without even thinking.
and then when you were done, were your feet like smoking or
No,
anything
not
or?
at all. They weren't even hot. I walked
So
off the
bummer.
coal onto grass, which felt beautiful, but nothing was burned, nothing felt hot or awkward.
That's so wild. And so I'm sure having been trained in science, like is there a part of your brain that's kind of struggling to understand? No, not
No,
anymore.
I think I've left that behind. I, 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 I think I've left that behind.
I suppose you couldn't hold on to that and then walk on coals.
No, it's exactly the opposite. No, if you think about being burned, you would probably be burned. It's your mind over matter, truly. But to get back to mandala, to your
Yeah.
question, when I first moved to Taos, my connection with another Jungian analyst sparked the mandala work. We were doing workshops with people, evening sessions about dreams and so on. And at one point, we thought we should do something for a Friday night, all day Saturday, and a debriefing on a Sunday. So we thought of doing a mandala with 4 directions. And we didn't even think about anything beyond that. It was just, let's do some drumming and getting in touch with the 4 elements. And then on Sunday, we create a life story within that parameter. And that was in 1998. And I have continued doing my personal mandala since then. And here's a fun story. I was artist in residence at the Ojai Valley Inn and Spa in Ojai, California. I had my little artist cottage and apothecary, and I had hired someone to do very structured mandalas, beautiful geometrical expressions. And one day we had 3 people lined up, but the teacher didn't show. And spa front desk was a little frantic. They said, "What are we going to do? Do you know anybody who does mandalas?" I said, "Well, I do mandalas, but they're different." And they said, "We don't care. As long as you call it a mandala, do it."
Right.
Well, that took off. The
Wow.
feedback was good. And then eventually somebody else took over the artist cottage, and I got a little cottage by the pool
Oh,
doing mandalas, only mandalas.
that's a lesson. Don't miss your job. Don't skip a day because someone's gonna come in.
It was, I really wondered why now. And,
Yeah.
I had started on a career as an artist when I retired from being a counselor. And I thought that was it. And so when this happened, it shook me a little. I thought, why now and why going back to this? But in hindsight, I now realize, 20 years ago, I still paint, I still write, but it's this work that really matters in terms of serving others. That's what my life is about. The rest is indulging myself, being creative, nurturing myself, but doing this with and for others has become truly my purpose. I feel like I'm approaching my 85th birthday this summer.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm thinking, what do I do with the last pages of the last chapter in my life? What really matters? And so that is my number one.
I do want to challenge what you said about making work for yourself as indulging, because I do think as we talk a little bit more about like the connection of art and intuition, that anything you do that's creative is tapping into this like higher frequency. And I think that only can benefit other people. But I do want to first talk about what exactly is a mandala and how is it that you use them,
Well,
mandala, to like meditate
yes.
or.
Mandala is a Sanskrit word and means circle, center and circle. And so in nature, we find centers and circles everywhere. When you think about it, just look at the iris in your eyes. Look at flowers. Look at a tree trunk. The cells in our body. I mean, everywhere. Centers and circles are a naturally occurring thing. And our unconscious relates to that. And the discovery that Jung was, I think I may have told you this before, Carl Gustav Jung was talking with a client about their dream. And as he was listening, he formed his own image. And there was a disconnect. So he decided to draw a circle on the paper that he gave them, and then they could relate the dream. Whereas the blank paper, they could not deliver any images.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I
Based on
remember
that
that story.
idea, I thought, if that's possible, if the unconscious relates to circles, then a mandala is the perfect vehicle, to do a journey, an inner journey, looking back and dreaming forward. And also assessing what is it that supports you when you need help? And who are you in essence? Like, how do you know yourself in the depth of you, like nobody else can ever know you? And so I created this mandala field with 4 directions and a center circle, that it's a little easier to get organized as you look back on your life and you journey forward. And that has become the vehicle for quite often self-discovery, and occasionally just a snapshot for the moment to start therapy with. It gives me more information and the person who's seeking answers when you are clear about what your unconscious is telling you and where you wish to go.
Yeah, and just for listeners, my experience of the reading that we did was there were the 4 sections and they were the 4 kind of chapters of a person's life, assuming you live to whatever age. Or I guess that's a good question. Like, have you ever had someone do the 4 chapters and then they passed before they made it to the 4th one?
No,
Because the
actually,
universe would be like, you don't have time to do a mandala. You should just skip over that.
no, but I've had children do it, and it's
Oh,
amazing
cool.
the dreams they have for their future or the visions they have for old age. It's so untainted because they haven't been influenced by so many things and experiences in their lives. So the journey that people do as they create their mandala is more important than anything else, because you take inventory in a way.
Yeah.
And the interesting part to me is that the unconscious does not speak in words. The unconscious wants color and symbol and maybe a little representation, like a little stick figure. It's not about art at all. It really is about being authentic.
Mm. Right. So you don't have to have a certain level of artistic
No,
skill to
not at
create a
all. As a
mandala.
matter of fact, I have to tell you that I had a travel writer at one point who didn't want to do it.
Oh,
No, she had to do it in order to write about it,
sure.
but she wasn't interested. She took a black piece of paper, she created the shape for the mandala, and then she gave me 4 little colored spots in various points. And she said, I'm done.
you're like, well, the black paper already is a choice.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So I gave her feedback about the dots she had in different colors, and she
yeah.
couldn't believe what that meant.
Mm.
And she went back to finish her mandala.
Oh,
So
interesting.
it's even a little bit can mean a lot.
Hmm.
The feedback I give you once you're finished comes from a universal point of view. The meaning of colors, of numbers, of symbols, of placement. And a lot of it is intuitive, even though I do have a structure, you know, generally.
Well,
But
that's what I thought was interesting because I've done aura portraits before and I've kind of created my own associations with color relating to chakras, mostly like
mhm,
the traditional rainbow of the
yeah,
chakras. But yours were a little bit different. Like, for example, is it okay if I spoil like some of your codes? Like, I had some sections of brown
you
and
would
you,
never spoil them. I actually created
okay,
a little
good.
book and I give that out.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I was like, I don't want to give away your
No, no,
IP.
no.
But yeah, like, you're like, oh, these sections of brown means you learn the lesson the hard way, and that was really interesting because I would have thought like, oh, brown is like grounded and earthy, which maybe it is too, but um they weren't the obvious things, but then they really were right. They were dead on. And I did wonder if the way I use things was because you were going to be reading it. So it was like I was making a drawing so that you could read it in the way that you do. Like it was, if you channel the way to read it, I was like channeling how to make it so that I could get what I needed out of it. I don't know if you've ever.
It's hard to tell, and I don't question it because I honor it without questioning it at all. Whatever happens in that session is what is supposed to happen.
Mm,
And I tune in, and sometimes people say, "Can you repeat that sentence?" And
yeah,
I
I
can't
had that.
because I it didn't really come from thinking and analyzing. It came through.
And I've had that experience giving like tarot readings,
Hmm.
like when I give a reading, sometimes people will be like, and maybe this has happened to you, they'll be like, oh, that thing happened, I got that job. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm
Right,
sorry.
right. But
Yeah.
you know then how that goes. You go into a space and you listen. You just give what comes through.
Hmm. Do you find it is predictive, or what is the best way to use a reading like that? Like if someone were going to hire you for that, is there a thing that you would recommend using it for versus it's not going to tell you whether to go to college maybe, or or like how do you see it as most beneficial?
It all depends on what is in the person's mind as they do the mandala.
Okay.
I've actually even assigned mandalas to people who wanted to get answers for their business or their
Mm.
careers.
Oh, interesting.
And with that in mind, when you think about it, how did you get to where you are now? Where do you intend to go?
Mm.
What are the ingredients you need to get there? You can put a theme on it. And I did that after, I told you that when this woman didn't come and I did the mandala at the inn and I questioned why now. I did a mandala with that question.
Oh.
And it looked like when I was young, I was pregnant with this idea.
Mm.
In my adult life, I nurtured it, but unconsciously. And in my wisdom age, all the seeds suddenly needed to spread.
Hmm.
Um,
So you
and what
just
I
weren't ready.
received, yeah, it was amazing. It gave me the assurance that I was on the right track, that this was not an accident. It happened because I needed to be called.
You couldn't you couldn't decide now I'm going to do this.
No,
It had to be
I
something
would
where
not
you.
have decided had this not happened.
Right, you just never would have done
It
it.
was not even on my mind.
Mm.
I did those mandalas for myself. I'd never done them for anybody else.
Oh, never.
Never.
Oh, wow.
And so these 3 people who had signed up that day were my very first people. And I was shocked that what came out.
Before doing mandalas, you were making art, was there any kind of intuitive, mystical connection, or was this the first time that you found like a vehicle for more kind of divine intervention within your work?
Not in doing art, because I started out as a very traditional botanical artist,
Oh, okay.
following the rules of, Kew Gardens, Royal Horticultural Society, London.
Well, and that's what Hilma af Klint did
Mm-hmm.
for a long
Yeah,
time. Did you know that? Yeah.
yeah. And
So
and what I
interesting.
found out was that I couldn't draw or paint a plant that I didn't have a relationship with.
Oh.
That was a surprise to me. And also that I knew them so intimately afterwards. For example, I did red onions at one point, and then my husband put them back in the bushel with the rest of them. And I was very upset because they were my onions. I knew these. So, and I found them because I knew them really intimately, every little line on their leaves, on their body. So I found them again and put them on a shelf and lived with them. It sounds a little crazy or sentimental, but I I have advised people. I was teaching art at the Taos Institute of Arts. If you have no relationship with a piece, don't attempt to paint it. It will never
Mm.
work.
Mm. That's interesting to think about. I mean, contemporary art is so funny because there's a lot of work being made that isn't of anything, but I suppose, yeah, everything has to, like, would you say that that's true for just any kind of creative process? Like, if you
Uh,
don't have the spark for
yeah, the
something.
spark is important. Well, I do abstracts as well, but the difference between the two is one, if I do a botanical, let's say I have a flower here, I touch it, I see it, it goes from seeing it and feeling it into my other hand, drawing and painting it.
Yeah.
It does not involve my, uh, what would I call it, my emotions. I
Mm.
love what I do, but it has very little to do actually with what I'm expressing. So I had a need to express what was in my belly. And there it goes from there to my heart.
Mm.
And then it goes to my mind. I want to explore the idea. And then the spark happens. And then I create abstracts.
Mm.
And sometimes they have, for example, I did earth, water, fire, and air, but not the way we perceive them physically, but what they meant spiritually.
Mm. And could you say more about that?
Well, it's a process that I did, and I felt I was in altered state doing it, just allowing the shapes to form and the colors to come out and the motion. Um, it was a very meditative process.
And why do you think that's important? I mean, I think it is, but why do you think it's important for people to be able to tap into this
I
type of
don't know
energy?
if it's important for everyone. Some people may just be very visual and need color and express that way, or just do it aesthetically beautiful. For me, it's important that it's real. It expresses who I am, and it doesn't go by any other norm because it's my painting. It's my understanding. It's my feeling. It's my choice of color or motion. And sometimes I feel like I need to dance that motion, not the whole body, but with my
Mm,
hands, to get the shape, the line.
that's interesting. So I wanted to ask kind of like a topical question. And it's interesting given that you grew up in Germany during a highly authoritarian regime, which is, the strategy of the Trump administration is right now to dismantle everything we know and to replace it, meanwhile, telling us that it's normal. Like, I think the whole strategy is to act like this is normal so that we forget what we value and like we stop pushing back against things that we don't want. And I came out really late in life, and so this is kind of triggering this experience of like losing the internal compass. I think there's a lot of structures in society that kind of challenge people's internal like intuition, or make it so that you're not supposed to listen. But I think what you're talking about is a bunch of different practices that like have brought you back to your own internal compass. And so I guess that's a convoluted way of saying like, what do you think is the importance of, or like, yeah, what do you think is the importance of intuition? And like, what would you say to people who are struggling to hold on to their internal compass as we're being bombarded as a culture in America, at the very least, if not everywhere right now? Like, how do we stay centered when we're being faced with so many like gaslighting, images and news releases and behaviors?
I think it is very, as you said, how do you stay centered? I think we all need to find out how we can center ourselves and stay within that center as much as possible, being aware of it. Whether that means taking a deep breath and getting back to where you know you're centered, but also to connect with like-minded people. And not
Mm,
only that, extend love to those who don't see it.
mm. So
Because
like
we
the
need
Trump
community.
administration.
We can we cannot foster division. Much as we know it's not the right path right now for many, but they may not even see where they're headed. This country has had a long history of dumbing down, of not fostering critical thinking.
Mm.
And so that leaves the door wide open to what is happening now.
And I think it's important, if I'm understanding you correctly, to say that it's not about making things more accessible, but it's like just accepting the status quo. Is that what you mean by dumbing
No,
down, or
as a
what are
matter,
you thinking?
no, don't. I'm not accepting the status quo.
Or no, but what do you mean by dumbing down?
The
Which obviously
dumbing
nobody
down has
wants.
happened educationally speaking. It was SATs. You have to fit the norm. It is not individual education where people learn how to think critically. I mean, that's not true for everyone, but I could now maybe assume half the country may fit that. If you are raised by watching television instead of thinking through things yourself or being creative or inventive, you are having no feedback loop. You're just taking it all in without thinking. And that is a preamp for what is happening now. People take what they hear or what they've been told without thinking about it or doing something for it.
And how do we reach people? Like, I love that you said to send love to people who are lost, because I do feel like there's, just going to name it as like the white male from a certain age to a certain age who maybe feels abandoned by new philosophies that don't include them as like the hierarchy, like the top of the pyramid anymore. And yeah, like I'm like transitioning, right now, and may at some point identify as a white male myself. And it's like, thinking about how to occupy that space in a way that allows room for everyone would mean reinventing masculinity, essentially. And this is something that I've been writing about a little bit. But so it's like, how do we bring in these guys who don't feel like there's a place for them in this new iteration of what, like,
I don't
like,
believe.
how do we bring them in if they're just like, right now they're escaping into video games and Joe Rogan podcasts and
I wished I had an answer for that. I
yeah.
I I
Me too. I mean, come on.
yeah, I truly believe that our thoughts are energy and our intention has energy. So if you direct it mentally to that genre, that age group, it will work. If we all join together and do this, there is an energy field that will envelope them and there will be a spark of insight. I'm certain. I remember a session, I did a workshop with Robert Bly and Marion Woodman in Toronto long time ago. And there was Sam Keen, who was working with the men. And one day, and at that point, I was so anti-men. I had it, the men were in a different room, and I heard this almost, I want to call it a primordial scream, joint screaming. And it touched my heart. I realized they were hurting. They were not what they presented themselves to be. And I changed my attitude, my thinking, that there was such a vulnerability that they were never taught to express. And so I feel strongly that we need to extend love. We need to extend an open ear without judging and really develop deep listening. I don't know any other tools that would work. But in our encounters, no matter where, that is an attitude we can develop and act on it. I remind myself every day that it's really about light, it's about love, it's about peace, it's about connecting.
Connecting. I do think something that you've iterated a couple times is building community with
Yeah.
both like-minded people and,
Mhm.
maybe,
Well, we need to support each other, obviously. We cannot be islands. But it's important as we connect that we share that we extend that we make that community more inclusive.
mhm,
All inclusive, I would like to say, without
definitely. And
judgment, because there is no, why do we judge anybody? We have a tendency even to judge ourselves, but basically, we all came to this planet to learn our lessons. We don't know what the other person's lesson may be.
right. And I think it does make you feel safe when you're the judger and they're the ones who have done the wrong thing, or they're the ones who are like less than. And so I can see why that's like the impulse. It's like it makes you feel protected from the bad stuff. But yeah, I think we've kind of now maybe slightly on the other side of like cancel culture, where people were just being like shamed out of society. And I do think that's created a bit of a backlash. And now we're kind of like, how do we move forward? But
It's
there's still,
scary.
it's
It's
scary.
very,
You
it's
have to let
frightening.
go of
Yeah,
that position of strength where you think you're better
yeah.
because,
You said something interesting that you feel safe when you're in the safe spot when you judge. how could you feel safe without judging?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
what
question.
safety can you generate from within instead of needing to judge in order to feel safe?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that, and this is something I've really struggled with for a long time, but as I've gotten more mature, I've been really trying to do like not necessarily knowing the answer, but thinking about like what is the win-win in this situation if there is one. Like how, like, and kind of just asking for help. Like, how do I get to a win-win here? And that could be for anything, like I've got subletters and, jobs and people who get cranky about whatever thing. And it's like, rather than reacting, how do you get to the point where you both get your needs met or at least feel seen? Because I do think that's like so much of it is, does the other person actually hear and see me?
I like the idea of win-win.
Win-win.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up. But I did want to see if you had anything coming up that people could look into. This will probably air in a few weeks.
Right now, I'm aiming at fall. It's really not so much mandala sessions, but in the fall, I would like to do a watercolor class
Mm.
because I think fostering creativity in people is very important. Um, and it's usually a lot of fun if it's a small group, it's a week long, and then, you know, you develop an energy within that carries to other steps. So it's being creative, it's working together, it's inspiring. And what I like about that is they take away something where they can work at home and express themselves in a nonverbal way and find beauty and joy.
I mean, that sounds great. Would this be in Taos, like in
It would be
person?
here in Taos, it would be here at my studio. And I can't take more than 6 people, so.
Okay, we'll get signed up now, people.
Well,
Well,
I thank you so much. This was lovely speaking with you.
likewise, thank you so much. Wow, what a life. I'm very inspired by you.
Take good care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's all for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. This was your host, Thibault, with sound editing help by Natasha Lowy. If you love this episode, please share it with a friend, write us a review, and give us 5 stars for good karma points. To watch along, subscribe to our YouTube channel and see all of our videos and live talk recordings there. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time on The Side View.